Chicago's #1 news. This is ABC 7 News at 4:30.
As Governor Rod Blagojevich jogged through the streets of his Chicago neighborhood this morning, Illinois legislators in Springfield were voting to impeach him. Then later in the day, the governor came out swinging, refusing to back down under the pressure of impeachment.
And I'm confident that at the end of the day, I will be properly exonerated.
Rod Blagojevich is the first Illinois governor to be impeached. Now, this morning's vote, 114-1.
He ignored calls for his resignation, the governor instead portraying himself as a fighter for the voters of Illinois. ABC 7 political reporter Andy Shaw was at the governor's event at the State of Illinois building here downtown in Chicago, and he's joining us with more on today's dramatic events. Andy?
Alan, it was in fact an event, not really a news conference, because the governor's not answering any questions today about the serious criminal charges that include allegedly trying to sell President-elect Barack Obama's Senate seat and allegedly shaking down a children's hospital for campaign cash. He is also deciding not to talk about the fact that Illinois seems to be paralyzed politically and governmentally, not to mention a national laughingstock because of the scandal. But it was still vintage Rod Blagojevich today, giving us some poetry and moral sayings that at the bottom line of that is that he's being impeached for fighting on behalf of little people against power brokers and special interests.
In my view, those of us who make the rules ought to be able to follow a simple lesson that I was taught to believe in Sunday school, called the Golden Rule, that you should do unto others as you would have others do unto you.
The governor is joined at the Thompson Center today by a dozen low-income Illinois residents who've benefited from health care programs that, according to Blagojevich, required bending or even ignoring state laws because the legislature wouldn't appropriate money for the programs. One beneficiary is Omar Castillo of Cicero, who suffers from a rare kidney disease.
We intervened and acted in a way with legal advice around the legislature. Omar Castillo got that surgery. He got his liver. He's now alive and well and is going to live a long and full and happy life. Is that an impeachable offense?
But most of the state's political leaders agree with these community groups that are demanding the resignation of Blagojevich today because of alleged criminal activities, in addition to the abuse and misuse of power.
The governor did not address the central issue, which is the abuse of power that he has maintained over the number of years, last several years in particular.
We live in a society of laws and we have a system of governance, and everyone has to abide by that. Otherwise we have chaos and anarchy.
The governor's critics claim that with an embattled Rod Blagojevich at the helm, the state is paralyzed and unable to deal with a severe crisis of confidence along with a major economic crisis, so the governor's got to resign or be removed by the Illinois Senate.
I felt it was despicable, the fact that he fails to even see any of his own mistakes, some of the ways he's destroyed the confidence that people have in our government, brought our government to a standstill.
Because the governor chose not to answer questions today, we asked his press secretary, Lucio Guerrero, how Blagojevich can do his job, which is to run the state while he's fighting impeachment and the feds with such ferocity. Guerrero said the governor's actually been more productive than ever lately, signing bills, pardoning people, and getting ready for a budget address in February. That is, if he hasn't been convicted and ousted from office by the Senate, which is hoping to complete its work by the middle of February. It'll be a race between his budget address and the Senate trial process.
Bizarre, isn't it?
Amazing times. Andy, thank you. Only 7 U.S. governors have been impeached and eventually removed from office. The most recent was Evan Mecham out of Arizona. He was impeached in 1988. Mecham was convicted of attempting to interfere with the investigation into a death threat that was allegedly made by an aide. The vote in the state Senate there was 21-9, one more vote than the 2/3 that were needed. Mecham may be best remembered for rescinding the Arizona state holiday that honored Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Other impeached governors include William Holden of North Carolina and Nebraska Governor David Butler were impeached in 1871. William Sulzer of New York was impeached in 1913. Texas Governor James Ferguson in 1917, and there were 2 governors from Oklahoma, John Walton in 1923 and Henry Johnston in 1929.
Now, in another development,